So, as we know, organism is a complex structure consisting of the several levels of the organization. So now try to remember this. Organism, like living system, consists of the cell, consists of the cells, of course. Cells combine to the tissues. Tissues produce organs. Organs included to the systems of organs. And systems of organs are integrated into the organism, whole organism. So it is very useful for understanding of the physiological processes, because we always will change the levels of the explanations of the processes. Of course, we will discuss in the first time physiological processes of the cells, different types, different characteristics, different reactions, different abilities, different significance for our life. Okay, and of course we'll discuss tissues, then organs, systems of the organs, and in any case we will do conclusion about significance of the some process for the whole organism. Okay, so very interesting that systems of organs has different meanings. First of all, we know about morphological compositions. We know this like anatomical systems. Same, we can tell about physiological systems. Physiological systems. And we can very easy to give examples of this. For example, anatomical and physiological systems, respiratory system, digestive system, nervous system, excretory system, and another. Okay, so another systemic value formulated by the discovered and described by the Russian scientist, Russian physiologist Anokin. Anokin in 1935, and this level of organization goes like functional system. Functional system. How to understand the functional system and why we need to talk about it separately. Functional system is dynamically organized system. Organized system that united elements of the system united by a common function. So this concept help better understand physiological processes. For example, how to easy differ anatomical, physiological, and functional systems. Very easy. For example, anatomical and physiological system, for example, respiratory system. This system includes organs. What organs we know in the respiratory system? Of course, lungs, larynx. What else? Nasal cavity, etc. It is all usual respiratory organs, as we know. Functional system with name respiratory. Functional respiratory system. Functional respiratory system. It is combination of the organs that not produce only ventilation. It is all organs that take part in maintaining of the gas parameters, gas concentrations in our internal liquids like blood, tissue fluid, lymph, okay, all transport systems. And functional respiratory system include not only respiratory organs, it includes anatomical and physiological respiratory system with lungs, trachea, bronchi, nasal cavity, larynx. It will include the components of the circulatory system with vessels, heart, for transportation of the blood, and of course, blood system. It is liquid blood containing blood cells, RBCs, red blood cells, for the with hemoglobin for the optimal optimal saturation of blood with oxygen and transportation of carbon dioxide too, and central nervous system too, because it is a regulatory center that produce signals, nervous signal, and send it to the respiratory muscles, send it to the heart for changing of cardiac activity, to the vessels, to the smooth muscles of the vessels for optimal for maintaining of the optimal supplying with blood of tissues, and another many parameters. And this interaction of the organs inside functional respiratory system we can show like this. Okay, what is the main organs that include in this system? Respiratory muscles. We know this: diaphragm, external and internal intercostal muscles, and other. All of them, contraction of all of them, produce process of the ventilation of the respiratory respiratory system, ventilation of lungs. Okay, so what another? In this system include blood circulated in blood vessels, blood with RBCs, and of course we need to make movement of the blood in circulation. Circulatory system. Circulatory system. Okay, all these organs integrated into the dynamically organized timeless system that united by the common task. What is this task? This task is very simple. It is maintaining of the O2 concentration in the arterial blood, and carbon dioxide concentration. It should be maintained on the optimal level, like this, for oxygen and for carbon dioxide. So for proper function of these organs, respiratory muscles, respiratory organs, blood and circulatory components, we need to use common center. It is classically central nervous system components with combination of endocrinic organs, endocrinic system, combination of endocrinic organs. So this combination uses for the giving of the direct commands to the working organs for the maintaining of these gases, for example. Okay, and for giving proper commands, central of the regulation need to receive information about level of the gases in internal liquids. Now, we know this like feedback information, feedback control we need. So it is classical physiological scheme, classical functional system scheme that help us to understand this respiratory process. And we will try to explain any physiological process of regulation using these classical schemes. So now discuss feedback. Feedback. What is it? Feedback. So feedback is information. Okay, information about execution of the commands. Execution of the commands given from the CNS. So information that sent by the working organs, by the special receptors about value of the parameter, regulated parameter on the current time, and is it proper command or no? If parameter changes, it means center need to correct own commands, send it to the working organs, to the recovery regulated parameters, to the normal value. So feedback can differ. Feedback may be of two basic kinds. It is negative feedback and positive feedback. Negative feedback, it is a common mechanism using by our physiological systems and uses for the maintaining of the homeostatical parameters. We remember this principle. Homeostasis conception tells us that physiological functions should to be maintained on the stable level. Okay, and most of the physiological mechanisms work like this. And principle of this working we can describe on this simple example. So if we take some parameter, for example, glucose concentration in the blood. So, and this straight line indicate normal level of glucose in the blood. But homeostasis, it is not absolute, not absolutely maintaining of the particular value of the glucose concentration. It is always some fluctuations of the parameter. In some cases, it is increasing. In other moments, it is decreasing relatively this straight line. We know this like physiological range of the fluctuations. How it happens and how it works. To the glucose concentration on the blood, influence, of course, food intake. Food containing glucose in pure form or as component of the food material starts to digest with help enzymes in our digestive tract, absorbs to the blood, and of course concentration of the blood glucose start to increase. Okay, increase till this level, relatively this normal level. What happened next? Increasing of glucose concentration. Increasing of glucose concentration activate beta cells of the pancreatic gland. Beta cell produce hormone insulin. Insulin influence to the own target tissues. It is especially adipose tissue. It is hepatic cells, muscles, and the increased utilization of the glucose with these cells. Okay? Utilizes and converted to the more complex chemical substances like glycogen and increased transportation of the glucose into the cell. As a result of the insulin action in this moment and consumption of the glucose of this by these tissues from blood, as a result we receive decreasing of the glucose level. Okay, so it is classical negative feedback when stimulation of the function, giving of the signal, will produce response when this changes that activated by this stimulation will be eliminated. Okay, if food intake increase glucose level, response of the body, in this case, increase of the insulin into the blood, will make decreasing of this level of glucose. Opposite situation, when glucose level become less than normal physiological, is our straight line, as we remember, will produce opposite response. Insulin production become less, and next food intake will make new increasing of the glucose concentration, and we receive these constant fluctuations of the glucose concentration using negative feedback control. As a result, we receive maintaining of the relatively stable level. It is like some middle variant between plus and minus concentrations of the glucose in the blood. Okay, so and this range, we can name like physiological normal, physiological range, normal physiological range of the fluctuations. And most of our functions works like this, for maintaining of the stability and using feedback control. Usually it is negative feedback control. Our body try to maintain parameters of the homeostasis. Another variant of the response, another variant of regulation based on the positive feedback control. It is very very rare mechanism of the regulation. Very rare mechanism of the regulation, and we can see to this like effect of the amplification. When stimulation of the physiological system by the external stimuli will produce a response that can amplify primary changes, and this parameter increase till the achievement of the some effective result. We cannot maintain stability of the parameter in this case, but in some cases this mechanism of regulation is very useful. I can give you example of this. Example, it is the regulation of the oxytocin concentration in the blood in delivery. Process of the parturition. As we know, oxytocin target cell are located in the uterus, and target cells are smooth muscle cells. Okay, so what is the effect? The more oxytocin concentration, the more contractive response of the smooth muscle cells. As we understand, more activity of smooth muscle cells increase intensity of the delivery process. This pushing of the baby through the delivery canal. How it works? So we have basically oxytocin concentration. It acts to the uterus. Uterus contracts. Contraction of the smooth muscles push movement of the infant through the delivery canal. Movement of infant through delivery canal. This movement will produce distension of the delivery canal. Distension of delivery canal produce feedback information, feedback information, this afferent information to the hypothalamus. That is neural pathways with special receptors. This feedback information to the hypothalamus increase production. So as we know, oxytocin is a hormone of the anterior part of the hypophysis. No, posterior part of the hypophysis. It is neurohypophysis. And cells that produce oxytocin located in hypothalamus. When hypothalamic neurons producing oxytocin receive feedback information, feedback afferentation from the distension, about distension of the delivery canal, these neurons start to produce oxytocin in greater level and produce additional electrical activity that will help to increase secretion of the oxytocin, incretion into the blood, okay, through the neurohypophysis. Neurohypophysis to the oxytocin. So in this system, what we can see, the more distension, the more pushing moment, the more distension of delivery canal, more activation of the hypothalamus, more secretion of the oxytocin. More oxytocin, more stimulation of the uterus. Again, new pushing effect and new portion of the oxytocin will be stimulated. And we receive amplification of the oxytocin production. And oxytocin concentration increases till the successful delivery. After this, irritative stimulation by distension of delivery canal decreases and oxytocin goes back to the normal. It is timely used mechanism that work for the successful delivery. It is example of the positive feedback control, as we know.